We should. He's the new prime minister of our
Gonna be like
beloved country.
carnivore. We should have carnivore in there somewhere with our memes.
Makes it sound too cool. It's got to be like Carney, like like the guys we used to make fun of that worked at the fair. That kind of Carney,
Yeah.
We can't be cooling this guy up. I'm telling you, that whole like make Carney Photoshop Carney into doing all the coolest things was the most retarded like op ever. Like, are you guys serious? Like subconsciously, I feel like this is having an opposite effect.
You're probably right.
Because in a lot of ways, I don't think the mind can distinguish. The subconscious isn't distinguishing the two. It's just he makes Carney.
Just sees him in a cool thing, lying about something. But the meme is about lying, but the subconscious
reminds me of the most interesting man in the world. I mean,
yeah,
it would be a good ad campaign. So I'll jump right into this. This is the boomer bust. So this is just kind of a breakdown. Now, I don't really care, but this is just there was some interesting tidbits in here about him getting voted in that I don't think that I'll be interested to see if you've heard any of this yet.
Okay, so, I can't wait.
Because it's like they've got this whole paint job like Carney's going to just run rim. So this actually might even start to show as to why guys like Wyatt are starting to say, well, those polls are crazy. You know what I mean? Like this whole Carney thing is so anyway, it's official. Mark Carney has won the prize of prime minister. Now he must figure out how to keep it. Carney comes to the job with a lot of pluses, chiefly his steady demeanor and economic experience.
Hang on. Who wrote this? Where's this from?
This is the National Post, which is usually pretty conservative leaning. Chiefly a steady demeanor and economic experience, but also a pile of vulnerabilities. Already, the conservatives are gleefully exploiting them, branding him a liar, sellout, and globalist. They are saturating social media with memes and clever ads, trying to define him before he calls an election, which is likely imminent. Considering the latest Nanos polls puts them a mere percentage point ahead of the Liberals. So anyway, let's jump into this. First, Liberal numbers don't bode well for volunteers. Of roughly 400,000 registered Liberals with free memberships, 152,000 cast their votes, a turnout of 38%, and Carney won with 131,674 of them. In contrast, 65% of 400,000 paid members cast a ballot in the Conservatives' 2022 leadership election, which Poilievre won with 295,000 votes. Ahead of the vote, Liberal Party members tried to dampen expectations by blaming technology, and it's true that many of them believe the race was a slam dunk for Carney, but I suspect there are reasons for the low turnout, one of which is that supporting the Liberals doesn't cost you a dime, which makes for less committed members. And so this is interesting already because the technology thing, like people are already pointing out, it's like, well, you'd think it would have been the boomers that would have had the trouble with the technology. But either way, I mean, he was going to win either way. So let's jump down here. Carney's big numbers, in contrast, were in ridings that are older and more affluent. Not coincidentally, perhaps, those who have the most to lose faced with the chaotic threatening of a U.S. President Donald Trump. Carney has a choice. He can try to bridge. Oh, I skipped the meat of it here. Where is it? Here we go. So that first key point there is right under the second key point is organization. The results show the party is very weak in Quebec, a province that is key to any majority government. 24 of the bottom 25 ridings were Quebec ridings, and in almost all fewer than 50 people voted. Turnout was higher in Montreal area ridings, but if the party wants to make gains in the province, it needs to shore up the island. So, I mean, 50 people voting. That is pretty pathetic, I would say, right?
Well, that's, yeah. So did you hear that there was a whole huge problem voting? Like, what's her name?
Yeah, I did. Let me just finish.
Okay.
I'm going to finish one more paragraph. The third point is strategic and stems from the weakness of Carney's opponents. Chrystia Freeland got only 8% of the vote, which wasn't great, but the real surprise was Karina Gold, who polled an anemic 3.2%, barely 2.2% ahead of Frank Baylis, who most people had never heard of. Pundits were pumping Gould as a possible second place finisher, but she flamed out. So anyway,
they might have memories of her being completely woke and just really gross to listen to. Like I was like disgusted by the stuff that she had to say during COVID and after COVID. It's like she was just like the epitome of what was happening at the time by the politicians. You know, it was gross. So maybe people have a bad taste in their mouth from that. I don't know. But I also heard that they didn't
call an election this week. That's what I read today.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I heard at the beginning, remember the very beginning, they're like, oh, you don't even have to be a Canadian citizen to vote, to sign up to the membership.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be a
And
total shit show, but
well, they said that there was Candace Malcolm said she's getting all kinds of emails of people that were trying to vote and they weren't able to vote. They only allowed that many votes, it seems like. So I mean, maybe not 100% of the people are going to vote, but it sounds like a lot got turned away.
yeah, well, I think that would have been 400,000 would have been the max.
That would have been 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But even that number was low. I expected that number to be higher with it.
With a free
With the
membership
age of
and
the internet.
opening it up to everywhere, yeah.
The age of the internet. I mean, in the age of Bodie McBoatface, you never know what you're gonna get. Anyway, I got a shit ton of stuff, so I can keep going, or you can go.
Yeah, keep going on carnivore.
Oh well, I don't know that I have a bunch more carnivore stuff.
Okay, well I'll do that.
Everything else I have is like I got some tariff stuff, some general Canada stuff. Yeah, that's my only Carney stuff.
Okay, then let me transition into my whole thing then.
Your whole thing? You're gonna do the whole thing?
It's gonna start with Carney. So this is a guy, gas price wizard. He's talking about he's on an interview here and he's talking about the Trudeau cronies, but also about Carney's wife, and it gets into the climate change organizations and stuff. Can you hear that?
I cannot hear that.
Okay. Good thing I checked. I can't believe this. Let me see what.
I can't believe it either.
So I mean,
this is why people don't do it live, so they could just edit this out.
Yeah, exactly.
Never really had. All he had was the last name. But he's done some really dumb things. Mark Carney is very unapologetic. The very fact that he has Gerald Butts and Katie Telford and the same group of liberals behind Justin Trudeau behind him, that should be an alarm, as well as his wife. And I don't like to bring in, our backgrounds, but his wife is part of the Eurasia group, part of the most militant of climate, catastrophists out there. Diane Fox, I should say, Carney. There's no doubt in my mind these people are committed to their green agenda, which it does not include human beings in terms of their ability to make ends meet, unless they're prepared to accept a significant decline in their standard of living, according to what they think.
This might be hyperbolic for some people, but we have to pay attention to this. This is going to be, I thought this was kind of fizzling out. Well, I shouldn't say I thought that. I was hoping that this was going to fizzle out a little bit, especially with what's happening in the States. But I mean, I think they're doubling down. That's why they want Carney in here.
This is another form of authoritarianism on a level that Canadians are unfamiliar with. And if democracy doesn't matter with them, as it appears to be the case in the Liberal Party today, we have a parliament that hasn't functioned since September. By order of the Speaker, the Liberals have refused to divulge information about their green slush fund. That's money that you and I, our children or grandchildren, will have to pay for years to come, that have been divested to make these green grifters very, very rich. The fact that the government is protecting all of that while at the same time changing a leadership, which is going to have pretty much the same policy, while at the same time not bringing Parliament back and not giving the will of the people to give its stamp of imprimatur on what the government is doing, suggests to me this is a government that doesn't really care about people, doesn't have to worry about people, and of course is acting in a way that is totally anathema to our institutions and our public approval of the kind of direction the country is taking. Mark Carney is going to be a real problem for Canada, and the sooner we get to having an honest discussion about him, rather than his trolls making him look out like he's something that is the greatest thing since sliced bread, is going to be a real challenge, I think, not just for Conservatives, but for folks like me who have been long-standing Liberals, many of us sitting in the wings, and we are not holding back. We are pouncing on this man because he's extraordinarily dangerous for this country.
I mean, that's a bit, like dangerous. Yeah, I do, agree with that. I don't know if that's the right term, but I think we got to be very careful Every Canadian must listen to this man, a former Liberal MP who has been right about JT all along and is 100% on the mark with Carney. This is another one about him and climate change. I don't know, dude. I can't believe we're gonna fall. We're falling for this. Like we are. Canada is falling hard for the propaganda. Elon's a Nazi and Carney's the savior. And forget about climate change right now. China, climate, and control. What Mark Carney's Chatham House agenda intends for Canadians and Bangkocracy. At this vital juncture,
Is that like the banks or like Bangkok? That has to be a K on the end.
At first, I've always thought it was bankruptcy until reading it out loud, and then I'm like, oh, it's Bangkocracy. Chatham House, right? Did you know he is one of the most influential foreign policy think tanks in the world? This is the Chatham House, right? And do you know that Carney has the record for the most talks at the WEF? Like he's spoken the most at WEF. I mean, this isn't just like what?
I'm not surprised.
This isn't just like an apprentice. We're getting like the high level green adept in here. So given Chatham House's deep involvement in shaping global governance, it's safe to assume that the policies that it champions will soon find their way into Canada. These policies ranging from pandemic control to climate mandates and mass migration are designed to erode national sovereignty in favor of centralized technocratic rule. He's talked about this, dude. He has said this. He's basically like, we're going to influence all these corporations, to use a specific energy and for us to use a specific type of energy. And they want basically all of us down at the bottom, and they want these elites to basically steward the world for us. It really does. So a report even states crisis and shocks, including disease outbreaks, financial crisis, and conflicts, can create windows of opportunity to trigger universal health reforms. That sounds like it's right out of Klaus's book there. But here's the climate authoritarianism. So the Institute is also at the forefront of climate authoritarianism, calling for financial systems to be aligned with net zero goals. He's already threatened net zero to us, right? He's like, we're going to be, complying with this net zero, and the climate's not going to get fixed until we get to net zero. Like, you're like, what the fuck, dude? Conveniently placing Carney, the former Bank of England governor, at the center of finance and climate policy. It advocates for the carbon border adjustment mechanism. Have you heard of this? The CBAM?
Like a carbon tariff?
A global carbon tariff regime that punishes countries with lower climate regulations. It's the same political class that called Trump's tariffs unjustified economic warfare, yet they push global carbon tariffs with a straight face. So Chatham House also aggressively promotes mass migration, urging nations to balance security concerns with their obligations to protect refugees. In practice, this means overriding national sovereignty in favor of mass resettlement policies dictated by international bodies, unelected international bodies, probably. Despite its Western branding, it's deeply tied to Chinese entities, including the Embassy of the People's Republic of China, China International Capital Corp, CICC, and other state-backed firms. More revealing is its collaboration with the Development Research Center, the DRC of China's State Council, a direct policy link to Beijing. This partnership, established during Xi Jinping's 2015 UK state visit, facilitated Chinese engagement with Western elites on governance strategies. So who exactly does he serve? Like, China's 2050 plan aims to replace the U.S. as the dominant global power. Carney, through organizations like the Chatham House and Canadian Politics, appears to be carrying China's baton, ensuring 30 years of political subversion under the Liberal Party continues. And then they talk about the war of Bangkocracy here. I'm not going to get into this because I want to stick to the other stuff. There's one of Corbett's videos embedded in here. Something to think about. Everything the public sees in here is likely passed through a gatekeeper, either electronic or someone's handler. So why full-on exposure of Mark? It's to ensure he is not elected, so the other wing of this same bird is installed, or some other reason. Any thoughts?